The House Committee on Natural Resources, Environment, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation will come to order. Would the clerk please read in the letter from the speaker?
Dear Mr. Clerk, I appoint the following members of the 102nd Legislature to the standing committees for the 2023-2024 legislative session. Natural Resources, Environment, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation. Lori Putsky, Chair. Jen Hill, Vice Chair. Veronica Pies, Mike McFall, Nate Shannon, Noah Arbit, David Martin, Minority Vice Chair, Josh Schreiber, Mark Tisdale. Sincerely, Joe Tate, Speaker of the House.
Would the clerk please take the attendance?
Chair Putsky.
Present.
Representative Hill.
Here.
Shannon.
Present.
Arbit.
Here.
McFall.
Here.
Pies.
Present.
Martins.
Here.
Tisdale. Schreiber.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Representative Hill moves to adopt room 327 of the Anderson House Office Building on Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. as the normal day, time, and location for meetings of the House Natural Resources, Environment, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation Committee. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Chair Putsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill.
Yes.
Shannon.
Yes.
Arbit. McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Aye.
Martin.
Yes.
Tisdale. Schreiber.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the date, time, location is adopted.
The House Natural Resources, Environment, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation Committee will follow the committee rules as prescribed in Chapter 4 of the House Rules. Before we get started with our presentation, if everyone just wanted to introduce themselves, I know we have some new members on the committee, so if you just wanted to introduce yourself, say what district you're from, and something you're looking forward to working with on this committee. You want to start with Vice Chair Hill?
Turn the mic on. Hi, I'm Jen Hill. I am representing the District 109. That's the Central Upper Peninsula, Barriga counties, Alger County, Marquette County, and the eastern two-thirds of Dickinson County. And so this is a very important committee for our region, and I'm really looking forward to working on all parts, the outdoor recreation, tourism, and natural resources. It's my background, and I'm looking forward to what we can do this session.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much, Representative Nate Shannon in my third term, representing portions of Sterling Heights, Warren, Shelby Township, and all of Utica in Macomb County. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Mike McFall. I represent House District 8, which includes Madison Heights, Hazel Park, part of Ferndale, and then parts of Detroit and Highland Park. So I have both Wayne and Oakland County constituents. I'm really looking forward to working on some really important legislation around our natural resources and tourism, especially since tourism is one of our major economic drivers here in the state of Michigan. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Hi, my name is Veronica Pies. I'm a first termer, House District 11. That is most of St. Clair Shores in Macomb County. It's right along Lake St. Clair. And, all of Harper Woods and part of the east side of Detroit in Wayne County. I have a pretty vast interest in natural resources. Until this past year, I was a certified master gardener. And I'm looking at not just urban, looking at urban and out kind of accessibility issues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Martin, 68th District, which is the southeast corner of Genesee County, and Groveland Township in Oakland County. The Flint River runs through Genesee County, and it is a national water trail. I was a big part of getting that done when I was on Park and Recs there. I've been pitching Genesee County for a long time. We're going to get a state park there. Groveland Township is a Holly Recreation Area, Mount Holly Ski, Groveland Oaks County Park. We have an ORV park down there. So this is all a big deal, and I'm very proud that I just got my 5th year Certified Tourism Ambassador pin just about 2 days ago. So I've been pitching that tourism thing for a long time.
My name is Josh Schreiber. I represent the area of northern Oakland and Macomb County, including Ortonville, Brandon Township, Oxford, the village of Oxford, Addison Township, the city of Leonard, Oakland Township, Bruce Township, the Village of Romeo, and Washington Township. My goal as natural resources pertain to energy, to ensure reliable, affordable electricity for Michigan residents without raising taxes or increasing the state budget.
Great, and I know we have two members that are joining us virtually, so Rep. Arbit, if you wanted to announce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Noah Arbit. I'm the new representative for the 20th District, which includes all of West Bloomfield Township, Eastern Commerce Township, Orchard Lake, Kew Harbor, and Sylvan Lake. We have incredibly the largest inland lakes in Southeast Michigan, including Orchard Lake, Pine Lake, a couple of the big lakes, as well as the greatest number of inland lakes. So lake culture, outdoor recreation, preserving water quality, environmental protection is so important for my constituents and my community. And so I'm really excited to work with you, Madam Chair, and the rest of, and Vice Chair Hill, and the rest of the committee to ensure that Michigan remains a national leader on these issues. So thank you so much, and looking forward to joining you in person next week.
Great. Representative Tisdall, if you are on and wanted to say anything, now would be a great time.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mark Tisdall, second term, Rochester Hills, born and raised in Port Huron, grew up on Lake Huron. A great affinity and appreciation and respect for the Great Lakes. I apologize for the scheduling problem, but I did get a workout in today, so I'm keeping my girlish figure.
Well, I'm glad you're making use of the time. Thank you all for joining us, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity that we have here to do some really great work. This committee has a really broad task before us, and I'm confident that we can get to work on it. So the next item on our agenda is a presentation from the Department of Natural Resources. Today, we are joined by Deputy Director Scott Whitcomb and Legislative Liaison Tyler Ritterbusch. So thank you both so much for taking the time to come before the committee. If you'd like to join us up at the table, the floor is yours. Members, if we can hold questions until the end, I think that would probably be best.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, I'm Taylor Ritterbusch. I'm the Legislative Liaison for the Department of Natural Resources. Today, with me, I've got Deputy Director Scott Whitcomb, and we're excited to be here before you, talking about all the great things that we have going on at the DNR, and we are very excited to be working with you this year and through the rest of the session. So I'm going to put up our mission here up on the screen, and I'll let you read that as I talk about a little bit of the structure of the department, just to get you clued in there. We do have 7 divisions within the Department of Natural Resources that include wildlife, fisheries, parks and recreation, forest resources, law enforcement, marketing and outreach, and finance and operations. And then we also have 3 other entities that are under the DNR umbrella, which are the Office of Public Lands, which Scott was integral in getting set up and running. And then the Michigan History Center and the Archives of Michigan are also a part of the Department of Natural Resources. And they are integral in the preservation of our cultural resources, which you'll see referenced in our mission. Also, just want to give you a very brief overview of what the department's budget looks like. This is the department budget in reference to overall state budget. DNR has 0.7% of overall spending for the state. To zoom in a bit further on how our funding sources break down, 2/3 of our incoming funds are restricted funds, so that's coming in from our camp nights, that's coming in through timber sales, recreation passport, those types of things. The other 2/3 come from the general fund or federal funds. We've seen an uptick there coming out of COVID, and so we've seen a good investment there, mostly in one-time spending. And then just to zoom in a bit further, taking a look at how those appropriations break down based on those divisions that I described earlier, the largest share of that is going into parks and recreation. Obviously, they generate a lot of revenue through our 103 state parks. Those camp nights are coming in along with the recreation passport, As you can imagine, there's also a lot of spending there in terms of making sure we're taking care of our park infrastructure, facilities, those types of things. And then the second largest piece of the pie you'll see is forest resources. They also generate a lot of revenue through our timber sales. And then, of course, it takes staff and equipment, and that's why you see a large appropriation there. So with that, I will kick it over to Scott, and he's going to run through a number of different topics that are outlined in those packets that you have in front of you, and as they relate to our different divisions. So, Scott.
Thanks, thanks, Taylor. I'm happy to be here this morning, and it sounds like we have a really enthusiastic and invested group of representatives here, so I think this is going to be exciting. I'm going to talk about some of the public-facing aspects of the DNR, some of the things that you'll recognize, many of the activities that are important to so many of us, things like hunting and fishing and camping, and you know, these are not only recreational activities that are important to all of us, but they really are part of the cultural, you know, fabric of what makes us Michiganders. And these are very important resources to our residents, and they really belong to all of us. And our staff takes that very seriously, the stewardship and the management of those resources. And so today I'm going to talk about the top lines, and you'll see sort of the public facing side of this, but there's so much work that goes behind the scenes with maintaining our facilities or running surveys for wildlife surveys to understand what populations are doing or monitoring for disease, doing creel census surveys for our fisheries. There's just a lot that go on behind the scenes, and so you'll see a part of this, but there's so much more that's a bit deeper. I'm going to try not to read the slides, but I'll just add some color around each one of these. I'm going to start out with our Parks and Recreation Division. This is probably our most public-facing division, with our 103, soon to be 104 state parks, with the addition of Flint State Park. We welcome over, and these parks are statewide in their, you know, really their footprint. We've seen an uptick. We welcome over 30 million visitors annually, and that's up about 10 million a year post-COVID, and those trends seem to be continuing. We're holding on to those visitors. We also have over 1,100 public water access sites, boat launches on inland lakes and the Great Lakes, and so that allows access to our water resources. We also manage 19 state harbors, and then we do grant and aid on another 65 harbors of refuge around the Great Lakes. To gain access to the parks and recreation facilities, including our trails and our boating access sites, a recreation passport is required, and as of last year, about 40% of vehicles are registered with those recreation passports. And so we recognize having these green spaces and these recreational places are increasingly recognized as their importance to physical and mental health, especially we've seen since COVID with this folks flocking to these outdoor spaces. Next slide. Probably the next most public-facing presence that we have is our conservation officers. Our conservation officers patrol every county in Michigan. They're fully commissioned peace officers. They can enforce any laws. They're really a critical part of our rural law enforcement response across the state in that network. We see that really day to day as they're responding to these situations. They're often the first ones on the scene. And so we want to be, you know, keep them as trained up and as ready to go as possible. They have a really critical mission. They contact about 450,000 people annually. And not all of these are, you know, ticket situations where somebody's getting a ticket. A lot of times it's an educational message or just checking on how they're doing, you know, with the goal of recreating and enjoying our natural resources safely. We also have our Report All poaching line and a dedicated call, a dispatch center to distribute them in the field. and we respond to over about 11,000 text messages in a year that folks can send in, and over 30,000 calls annually. So there's quite a lot of presence there. We also have 10 visitor centers at different parts of the state, welcoming about 250,000 visitors each year. Another 40,000 make use of interpreter, maybe taking a hike or learning more. We also engage with teachers and educators annually to provide information that they can use in their classrooms about our natural resources. We also have our hunter education program, and we're educating through volunteers the next generation of hunters. We also have about 100,000 people each year that go through the Outdoor Adventure Center in Detroit, so that's another presence that we have. And we also have about 7 shooting ranges in different parts of the state that allow people to come and practice safe marksmanship. Next slide is fishing, and it wouldn't be the Great Lakes state without our wonderful fishing resources. And fishing is important economically, contributes about $2 billion annually to the state's economy, making us one of the top 3 states in the nation with regard to fishing expenditures. We also have state fish hatcheries. There are 6 of them that stock close to 20 million fish annually across 1,000 locations over both peninsulas. You'll see in the past couple of years, we've had some general fund appropriations directed into the fish hatcheries for efficiency and modernization. These 6 fish hatcheries consume about 20% of our overall agency's budget with respect to energy. So energy expenditure about 20% just on 6 small campuses. And you can imagine moving all of that water around, it's very energy intensive. So with the modernization and efficiency money, we're looking at things like more efficient pumps, LED lighting, looking at even solar and switching over to non-renewable renewable energy as opposed to other sources, just as ways to cut costs and offset operating expenditures. I would also like to just call attention some of that behind the scenes work that I talked about. We work very closely with many other states in the Great Lakes region and other provinces with respect to invasive species, most notably invasive carp, and keeping them out of our Great Lakes ecosystem. That's incredibly important, and we've got staff that work on that almost year-round. Next is wildlife, and this is probably most noted by public hunting. Michigan ranks 3rd in the nation for hunter participation and hunting-related expenditures. This contributes almost $9 billion to the state's economy, including over $40 million in license revenues. We also use federal funds that come to us through the Pittman-Robertson Act, which was passed back in 1937, which directs excise taxes on firearms and ammunition through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on a formula basis back to the states. So the hunters of the state and the shooting sports, they're really paying for wildlife management in Michigan and across the nation. And then also there's wildlife viewing and watching, and that's very important to many people. We have over 3 million people in Michigan participate in that, and that contributes about $1 billion to the state's economy as well. Next, I just want to call attention to our public lands and waters. So we have about 3.6 million acres of federal land in the state. And on top of that, we have another 4.6 that DNR manages on behalf of the residents of the state. This includes about a 4 million acre state forest system, another 360,000 acres with those 103 state parks and recreation areas, and then another 364,000 acres in dedicated game and wildlife areas. When you add this together with lands, about 2 million acres managed under the Commercial Forest Act, most of this in the UP, that DNR does have a sort of a management nexus with that. Those are open to public hunting. That brings the total to over 8 million acres of land in the state that's open to public hunting. We also have more bodies of fresh water than any other place in the world, including 3,300 miles of Great Lakes shoreline, over 11,000 inland lakes, and then thousands of miles of rivers and streams. I also want to call attention, DNR manages over 13,000 miles of state roads. Then these roads are not county roads, or they're not MDOT administered roads. They're roads that are under the authority and jurisdiction of DNR to manage, and they're particularly notable in our state forest system, but these are really the conduits that allow access to these natural resources for the public. And the management and maintenance of those fall on DNR to take care of. The next slide is our forestry, our state forest programs, and firefighting. Wildfire response is housed in our Forest Resources Division. We have one of the largest state forest systems in the nation. It's about 4 million acres. It's been dual certified by 2 independent certification bodies as being sustainably managed. It's been certified since 2005, and this assures not only the public and stakeholders, but forest products consumers that our lands are managed sustainably. We plant over 6 million tree seedlings annually. And this, of course, keeps our forests well stocked, but it also has climate benefits and wildlife benefits as well. The forest products industry is important. It contributes nearly $22 billion annually to Michigan's economy and supports over 90,000 jobs. And these lands, these state forest lands, are working lands, and what we mean by that is they're managed for a variety of uses, including timber harvest for forest products. But these lands are also, provide wildlife habitat. We mentioned that they're open to public hunting. They also protect sensitive species or rare and endangered species. And there's a lot of recreation that goes on in these lands as well, whether it's camping, ORV riding, snowmobile riding, non-motorized trails. These lands are really used by a variety of users. Also, in state wildfire protection, our agency is statutorily responsible for wildfire response. In the state of Michigan, we respond to about 250 wildfires a year, and these have the potential to burn thousands of acres of both public and private land. We also, our wildfire staff are highly trained. They're sought after to go out of state and provide resources out there. When they go out of state, we get reimbursed by the federal government for their participation in that. And so they're receiving valuable training by being on these wildfires out west or in Canada, and then we get paid for that. So that's a good deal for everyone. Next, I want to call attention to our museums and other cultural resources. This is also in DNR's agency, and it's really sort of the cultural side of that resource protection. We have the Michigan History Center right down the road here, and which is actually a network of 12 museums and historic sites across the state. Welcomes hundreds of thousands of visitors annually, as well as tens of thousands of school children to learn about Michigan's history. We also have the Archives of Michigan, which preserves the records of 150 million records, which is a staggering amount of work to keep track of all of that. And then we have about 1 million people a year visiting our state historic parks located around the tip of the mitt. Each year, DNR offers a variety of grants to local units of government, state agencies, and non-profit partners. Perhaps the signature program here is the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, which has been around since 1976 and has granted over $1.3 billion for outdoor recreation projects, both acquisition and development of recreational facilities across 83 counties. So we've got a statewide presence there. And the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund uses revenues from oil, gas, and mineral development on state minerals to feed into the trust fund And now the trust fund is actually at its cap. That money is going into the State Park Endowment Fund. When the State Park Endowment Fund reaches its cap, that money will again be redirected into the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. But this has been just a fantastic program across the state for many years. Then I think this is my last slide. Michigan is also known as aside from the Great Lakes state, we're also the trails state. We have over 13,000 miles of state-managed trails that serve a variety of uses, including 7,700 miles of motorized trails. That would be ORV, snowmobile, and single-track dirt bike trails. We also have just shy of 5,000 miles of non-motorized trails, so mountain biking and that type of thing. We lead the nation in rail trails with over 1,300 miles. These are former railroad grades that have been converted to multi-use trails. And our signature trail here in Michigan is the Iron Bell Trail, which runs from Belle Isle State Park in Wayne County all the way to the west end of the UP. This trail is over 2,000 miles long, passes through 48 counties, and really has separate paths for hiking and biking, and is still being built, but it's really a showpiece. And we recognize that these public trails offer social, economic, and health benefits. They serve to anchor and give communities identity, as well as connect communities to each other, and again, cater to a variety of interests and are so important. So as you can see, we've got a really broad mission. We've got a statewide platform that really touches all of our counties. We've got an incredibly dedicated and passionate staff, and we look forward to working with you. So be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just thank you for that excellent, thorough, and far-reaching presentation showing the importance of this natural resources to Michigan. And I'm just very excited as someone who's third generation to fish in the UP, first lucky enough to live here. I too, I've had a hook in the water since I could hold a rod. So I'm really excited for all that we can be doing for Michigan. Could you please let us know what you see right now as your priorities for the 2023-2024 at a high level, or as much detail as you can provide?
Why don't you take that, Taylor? Sure, I can start. I think a lot of what we're looking at the department is how we can help with the My Healthy Climate Plan, and part of that is making use of carbon credits. We have one project up and running now, and I think one or two coming online shortly here. That one will help provide revenue for the department, but also capture carbon, and that's an important piece of what we're working on. And there's some legislation associated with that we would be interested in working on with the committee. We also have a couple of other things around our conservation officers related to the mental health code and making sure that they can get individuals help. And then, we're always interested in looking at what we can do in terms of making sure that we're providing enough funding to take care of the habitat and resources that we have.
Vice Chair Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question goes to the carbon capture also. I asked this question, I think, last year. I don't think I got a final answer. So how many acres do we have in the carbon capture program right now?
So we have two projects that have been basically started. The first one is the Pigeon River project. That's about 100,000 acres. So that's our first project. We actually have received revenue on that project for the first time this year. We have sold all of the credits as part of that project for the first 10 years of that project to DTE Energy. And that project is just ongoing at this time. The next project we have online is located at the tip of the Keweenaw Peninsula and in the Emmett Moraines in Emmett, Charlevoix, Antrim, and parts of Sheboygan and Otsego County. That project is about 125,000 acres. So when you combine those two projects, the total acreage is about 225,000 acres out of a portfolio of about 4 million acres. So it's a relatively small percentage of our overall state land.
Are you aware of any private properties that participate with DT in carbon capture?
I'm not aware of any specific to private properties that have been enrolled in carbon programs with respect to DTE, but there are many of our large industrial forest landowners have enrolled their lands in carbon credit programs and have sold those credits. The other group of landowners that takes part in that are some of our nonprofits that own land, work in that space as well. Most notably, the Nature Conservancy. They have carbon projects as well. So this happens at the private level, the NGO level, and now the state level. Michigan was the first state in the nation to do a carbon project on state lands specifically. Others have followed in our path. I worked on this project a lot, so I can provide a lot of more information. But
that just leads up to the one question I really have.
Yeah.
Then we had 800 acres in Montmorency County that had a fire, and that was part of that carbon capture.
It was.
Do we reimburse those people that invest in the carbon capture when their product goes up in seconds and there's no more carbon captured because it's used up during that forest fire instantly?
We don't. So the way that works is there is a buffer pool that has been established of credits that takes the place of those credits that were lost. Also, the way carbon credits are accounted, it's sort of rear-facing. So you look at the carbon credits that are in the forest that have been accounted for through the growth of trees. So the trees are growing, they're pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, they're putting them into tree growth. You get a calculation of carbon credits based on that. You're also getting any avoided conversion. If a stand of trees doesn't get harvested, you're getting credit for that. You're also getting credit for durable forest products that are harvested because the embodied carbon is in them. So there's different ways that those calculations are made. If there are, say, more timber harvest, then there's fewer credits. So we sell fewer credits. If there's less timber harvest, then we have more credits to sell. So it's really accounting for what we have, and it doesn't influence what our management activities are. So especially in the Pigeon River country, timber harvest is incredibly important for our elk that are there and the management goals that we have for that area. So we're not seeing any decrease in the amount of timber that we're harvesting there. In the second project, and I'm really getting in the weeds here, so forgive me, but the second project, those areas have been really decimated by emerald ash borer and beech bark disease, and so those forest resources just really need to grow. And so we can be sequestering carbon while they're growing, and they're really not harvestable anyway because of the state of the forests. So that's a little bit deeper dive into that.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to follow up, I want to make sure that I have 40 acres if anybody's interested in investing in it.
I will say we do have, there are now 4 carbon developers in the state that work on private lands. So that is, I can follow up with you on that if you like.
Thank you. Representative Shannon?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for your presentation. Can you talk a little, and this is, you may not be able to talk briefly, but can you talk a little bit about your priorities with regard to suburban communities and how you interact with them and their efforts to increase and improve their outdoor recreation and green spaces?
Absolutely. We addressed that in our 2013 land strategy. We also addressed it in our 2021 land strategy that we put forward to the legislature a couple of years ago now. And really what that does is, when you look at how our public lands are distributed, definitely heavily weighted towards the Upper Peninsula and northern lower parts of the state. We don't have nearly as much in southern Michigan, and so we're really looking to expand those opportunities. We want to have public hunting that's a close drive away to suburban and urban residents. We also want to have parks and recreation opportunities close to those suburban and urban centers, because again, with public health considerations, we saw that, COVID hit, everybody went outside. And so we're looking constantly at those opportunities. We work with a variety of partners. We use our tools like the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund to fund those acquisitions. The challenge is there's just not as much land available. And you don't, the prices are a little bit higher, there's not as much, but we're continually trying to prioritize those, especially in Southeast Michigan, in the southern part of the state. It's a high priority for us.
Representative Tisdale?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Scott or Taylor. First, it's two quick questions. What's the price or value of a dollar value of a carbon capture credit?
It really is variable and it fluctuates. It depends on how the credit. We use one methodology. So again, not to kind of nerd out into the carbon world, but we use the improved forest management methodology. Prices range there anywhere from $7 a metric ton all the way up into the high side, approaching $20 a metric ton. Other methodologies may come at a different premium.
Okay.
But yeah, in general, that's what we're selling for.
That's a great ballpark. Thank you. And then, I think our biggest challenge, and certainly your biggest challenge, is going to be, the NREPA, or the Natural Resources Environmental Protection Act of, I think the first was 74, and then it was modernized or updated in 94. It talks about the taking and storage of mineral products, oil and gas, and also prohibitions. The Constitution talks about conservation and development as a paramount public good. So obviously there's a need to balance conservation and development. How do we do that as we're trying to move the economy towards electrification? There's going to be a huge demand for minerals. We're going to need ongoing natural gas base load as backup. Michigan is number one in the nation in underground storage for natural gas. How do we monetize that storage? How do we effectively balance while meeting the electrification demand?
That is a fantastic question. You want me to take this?
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it really is, and that's something that we've been, as an agency, we've been balancing those, sort of those different outcomes for a long time now. And we see that in oil and gas development that happens on state forest lands. There's an extensive review process that goes into place before those lands can be leased for mineral development. And we've got certain areas in the state that are set aside as non-leasable. Maybe there's deed restrictions on them, or they're sensitive in some way. And then other areas are leasable with stipulations or restrictions, and then other ones can be developed. And so we've been threading that needle for a while now. The same is true in the Upper Peninsula, where a lot of our mineral development takes place. We've had Eagle Mine, we've had other mines, and there's on state land, and we just have to structure those developments in a way that the natural resources are protected, and yet the products and the economy is provided for. I think by and large we've done a good job of that. As we branch into sort of the second part of what you were getting into, we have a 4.6 million acre land portfolio. A lot of these lands are pristine lands that are used for recreation and working forest lands. But with a portfolio that size, we've also got some lands that maybe were given to the state, or we bought for $1 or something like that have been degraded through past industrial uses. In those lands, we're looking at things like putting solar energy on those lands, because that would be a higher and better use than what they're serving right now. That would not only allow solar energy to be developed in a place, sort of a brownfield situation, but also generate a revenue stream for the state. You mentioned gas storage. We also have had interest by industry for geologic sequestration of carbon, and that could be another revenue stream for the agency and for natural resources protection. There's a lot of money through 45Q tax credits and also, again, the monetization of carbon sequestration. So we're actually looking at all of these, both with industry and there may be some legislative levers that we could enact there to make some of this a reality.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Were there any other questions for Deputy Director Whitcomb or Taylor? Oh, Representative Pace.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I had some questions about the conservation officers. I know it's very difficult recruiting law enforcement right now, and for a variety of reasons. And so I was wondering if that's a similar case with conservation officers, and also how that's affecting the services you're able to provide.
I can start on that one. It is certainly a difficulty that we're facing in recruitment and in retaining those folks. Conservation officers are not under the pension system, so they just have a regular state employee retirement program, and there are local municipalities that offer pensions that oftentimes share an academy with us. They get some experience as a conservation officer, and then they go back to those local communities where they have those retirement benefits. Another piece of that is, right now we have around 250 conservation officers out on the ground. That gives us roughly at any given time 2 in each county, and our counties are big and they cover a lot of ground. So, there are certainly times when we would love to have more folks on the ground, especially around November 15th when we have hundreds of thousands of hunters in the woods, or around opening weekend of fishing to patrol that. And we do have some partnerships with local communities to be able to do that enforcement on the water, snowmobile trails, ORV trails, where we share some of that enforcement authority. But yeah, it's certainly something that we're trying to address at the department.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you both for taking the time to be here. For the record, everyone, my office will make sure that both Taylor and the Deputy Director's contact information for the department is available to everyone if any questions come up afterwards.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you both. So we have no absent members to excuse, so we don't have to deal with that today at least. There being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.